Today we're going to look at my lightweight Micro Four Thirds setup for travel with the Panasonic Lumix G9. So I've talked about the Panasonic Lumix G9 on this channel a couple times now, along with just Micro Four Thirds cameras in general. I picked up a Lumix G9 earlier this year with specific intent to use it on more of my exploratory trips where I'm going to be hiking locations I'm not really sure what they're going to look like. Often at times of day, middle of the afternoon, where I do want a nice camera with me, but I'm not sure I'm going to be getting those portfolio shots and I want to keep my load down. I've also talked about how the Micro Four Thirds system is super useful for when you're doing trips where photography is not the primary purpose. Maybe you're taking a family vacation, but you still want to be able to have a nice camera, but you don't want to get bogged down with your normal big camera bag and your normal camera, just sort of to take some of that pressure off to get a great image, but still have a camera that's totally capable of doing so if the situation warrants. So I picked up a Panasonic G9 just for that purpose because it has a lot of great features with it that makes it a very versatile camera that I'm sure I'll be able to get some great shots, but without having to carry a whole big load with me. So I've talked about a lot of that. I really haven't looked at or shown on this channel what that travel setup looks like with this specific camera. So that's what we're going to do today. So this is the whole setup right here. It all fits in this pack, and we're going to we're going to unpack this, show you what I've got and why I've made these certain choices. I have this tripod out. We're going to set it aside for a moment. We're going to talk about it and why I do have it out. But we're going to set it back here for just a minute while we take a look at what's inside this pack. So it all packs down into this sling bag here. This is something I got off of Amazon. Unfortunately, I don't think this brand is still available, which is unfortunate because it's got a nice thick canvas material, nylon material, and it's been very versatile. This bag has actually made an appearance on my channel in one of my very early videos because it has been how I tend to carry my Micro Four Thirds systems around. It's just super versatile and flexible, and it works good for short trips and being able to stash a camera without looking like a great big camera bag. So pretty big fan of this. It's got lots of pockets. It's got side pockets. These are just moldy pockets that you can attach. Sometimes I can attach a second one over here if I want. On this trip, doesn't look like I'm going to need it, so I'm not going to put it on. Just trying to keep this bag small, light, and as unobtrusive as possible. So let's take a look at the bag. Main compartment, obviously that's where the camera is at. Now, I do use a little camera cube in there. Again, I don't think that specific one is available on Amazon anymore. That's where I got it from. I will put in the description maybe a link to something comparable, but it makes it super nice, super small, and the camera can fit right in there. And of course, right here, we've got the Panasonic Lumix G9. Like I said, we've talked about this camera before and what I like about it. Great for exploration, great for these little trips coming up where the primary purpose is for family vacation and the camera is just there just in case I find something cool to take a picture of and I want to be able to have the versatility to do so. But let's just real quick, I will link to the more in-depth video on this camera down in the description below, but let's just cover some of the features why I like to travel with this camera. So first up, this is an older camera. I want to say, and I didn't look it up just before to commit it to memory, I want to say around 2017 or so is when this camera was released. So it is getting to be an older camera, but when it was released by Panasonic, it was a very stills focused camera. And so it came with a lot of features that really sort of made it stand out that still make it a pretty powerful camera today, especially if you're into the Micro Four Thirds systems or looking to do something like I was, sort of a lightweight system and versatile system for travel and exploration. But some of the features are, it is a 20 megapixel camera, which I think is fine for what I'm going after. Has a fully articulating screen, so flip it around. I can do video on it. Actually has pretty decent video on it, but you can flip it around, everything like this. So nice articulating screen, makes it handy. It has in-body image stabilization, and I've sort of demonstrated that on, I believe it was a YouTube short where I did some waterfall photography handheld. I mean, you still want to be steady, but you can get those longer shutter speeds and get some small long exposure effects without having a tripod along with you. So that's super handy if you're really looking to get your load reduced and trimmed down. So it does have dual card slots, and anyone that's heard me on this channel knows I'm a huge fan of dual card slots. I feel like it's super important. Makes a lot of things easier. Gives you sort of an inbuilt backup. So a big fan of dual card slots, and this camera comes with it. 2 cards. They're just SD cards. I currently have 64 gig SD cards in there, 1 in each slot. That should be plenty of space for this trip. This is really just going to be a 3 or 4 day trip, nothing too serious. It's got the top LCD on top, just sort of cool to have, especially if you're on a tripod or looking down low. You can easily see your camera settings right on top. Super handy for that. And then one feature that I also like with this, we mentioned this is a 20 megapixel camera, which by today's standards isn't necessarily the most. But this camera has what's called high resolution mode, and I've demonstrated this in a YouTube short once. But it can, through the magic of software pixel shifting, it'll take 8 images and pixel shift those and be able to generate an 80 megapixel file. So for example, if I'm out and I happen to get those amazing conditions for that one shot that I just happen to have time for, I can use the high resolution mode to still generate an 80 megapixel file, even though I only have a 20 megapixel camera with me. So really, just a really versatile camera. Like I said, the body itself is fairly decent sized. I like how it feels in the hand though. That's why I actually use it more. I have a GX85, but it's okay. It does good picture wise, no problem with that. But it's one of those that just never quite fit great in my hand. It didn't feel great. So I'm a big one on ergonomics, and this just ergonomically feels really good, even though it is a little bigger than the GX85. Where the real savings comes in is on the lenses. This is a 12 to 60 millimeter lens, which on a micro four thirds gives you a field of view equivalent of a 24 to 120. I like that focal length for just about anything I would take a picture of. That should be wide enough. If it's not, I can always do like a panoramic if I need to be able to get that extra width. And 120 for most situations is long enough. Yes, I do enjoy shooting with a 100 to 400 on the Nikon systems, but I don't really want to lug one of those around. So there's a little bit of compromises to be made, but one lens, that's all I'm taking. Should be versatile for pretty much anything I want to do and give me lots of flexibility. I do have a Peak Design cuff strap on here. Makes it super handy to put on your wrist like that, just so you don't drop it. Where we're going to be, there'll probably be a lot of walking and things like that. It'll be nice to have that little bit of extra security there to wrap it around my wrist without being too obtrusive and getting in the way like a bigger strap would. If I decide I don't want the strap on there, just pop it right off there. Super cool with the Peak Design. Almost all my cameras have a Peak Design clip on it, so I can rotate through either neck straps or this little cuff. So with that said, let's dive into the bag just a little bit, because there are obviously some supporting accessories with it, like I gotta keep my batteries charged and things like that. So let's just take a real quick peek at that. And like I said, in here it's just the sling bag with a little MOLLE pocket. On the side here, I've got a dual battery charger. It's USB, and I can just either plug it in the wall, plug it into a power bank, and charge 2 batteries at once. Super handy from that standpoint. Taking 2 extra batteries, so I've got 1 battery in here, 2 extra batteries, pack them in up there, stick them in the bag, put this back in there. Like I said, I got 64 gig SD cards in here. I'm probably only taking those. I can't imagine filling those up, so I'm not even really taking any spare SD cards. That camera cube provides the little bit of extra protection I want for the camera while it's in there. It's not anything super crazy. Let's break it out here. This is a Ape case, super handy. Again, I think this is one of those things that's not necessarily available anymore, which is too bad because it's perfect size to fit into this bag, and just enough padding I can feel good about sort of just tossing this bag around and not worrying about the camera. So that sits in there, and that's it. That's all I need for my trip. But let's talk about that tripod I moved over before. So what I've got here, and this is going on the trip with me, is I've got a Benro slim carbon fiber tripod. It weighs a touch over 2 pounds. Now I just recently acquired this tripod, and my primary reason for getting it was actually for my video camera, for my other videos when I'm out in the field and using my full kit. It also makes a great travel tripod when you're really trying to keep that load down. It only stands up this tall, it's a little over 2 pounds. Doesn't get full height, like it's a little on the short side, but when you're traveling, especially when the trip is not photography focused or the emphasis is not on photography, I'm willing to make a little bit of compromise on that tripod height while I'm out in the field just to have the ability to have it. But that opens up the question, because earlier I said this camera has IBIS on it, meaning that you can get away with some long exposures without the tripod. And that is true. I've played with it. I've been pretty successful with it to do a slightly longer exposure, even with all the coffee I drink, at keeping things pretty steady. But with that said, if I happen to come across a scene where I really want a longer exposure, maybe a street scene with the traffic passing, or maybe I want to use that high resolution mode, to use that mode you really should be on a tripod. So this is such a small, lightweight tripod. I'm going to stash this tripod in the car. I could probably trust the IBIS and get away with IBIS for most of the shots I have in mind, or might have the opportunity to do so, but it's just the paranoid side of me of not being 100% confident in my ability to handhold anything for too long, even with good IBIS, that with this new tripod and the size and weight, it doesn't hurt to toss it in the car. It'll hardly take up any room, and I'll have it just in case I need it. So that's why I'm bringing the tripod. It's just me and my little safety net. And that's it. It all packs down to this. Literally, if you didn't want to take the tripod, you could set this aside, and it all packs down into this for your travel. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the Panasonic Lumix G9 and how I pack it up for a trip that's not necessarily photography focused, but you still want a nice, powerful, capable camera with you on your trip. I think this setup worked really well for me. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to enjoy having a nice camera with me to be able to take advantage of any photography opportunity I do happen to get on this trip. So let me know in the comments down below, what camera do you carry on a trip where photography might not be the primary purpose? I'd love to hear what your setup is. So if you liked today's video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see future landscape photography content from me, including tips, tricks, behind the scenes, mini gear reviews, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any landscape photography content from me in the future. And thank you for watching.